Hey guys, Verbal Engine 95 recording live from your local county prison cell. I was not able to do an episode last week. I know I said I was gonna be late with it, but I guess I'm pretty late with it. But regardless, I'm here and I'm gonna be doing. I've got one that I can do. This is one I've been thinking about. I just didn't really want to look into it very much. This is Space Ghost versus Birdman. Birdman being and Space Ghost being the classic Hanna-Barbera characters. I know this is kind of out there for a lot of people because these are 60-plus-year-old shows. But yeah, I mean, they've kind of etched themselves into the fabric of cartoon heroes and everything how we know them today. And I think it's they're probably two of the biggest ones as far as their specific genre goes. And I think that this is probably I think this is a good kind of homage here. So starting with Space Ghost. Now, the problem with Space Ghost is there's not really a consistent origin story. In some of the comics, he's kind of like a cop-like character. He's considered a peacekeeper. In other incarnations, he has a dead family or something, and that's right. And if we consider Space Ghost Coast to Coast, he's actually, in that incarnation, he's actually a real ghost. He's dead and immortal. But regardless of his origin story, in his, at his peak, I guess you would say, he's he's a cosmic hero. He goes around the galaxy, saving people in need, fighting villains and whatnot. And he does so because a lot of his technology is incredibly overpowered given the scope of what he's fighting. He has I believe it's his belt that allows him to turn invisible and or intangible, which is where he gets the moniker Space Ghost, right? And there doesn't seem, I'm going to say it right away, there doesn't seem to be any limitation to, maybe there's a limitation of power output, but there doesn't seem to be any, energy limitation of any of his equipment. Like, he doesn't seem to need to recharge anything or whatnot. So he could just stay intangible pretty much as long as he wants. Why he doesn't do that as often as he does, I don't know. But he also has energy rays. Sometimes, he has a lot of rays that have the same, he has what he refers to as heat rays, but also heat force. He has energy rays, which I would assume aren't hot, they're not trying to disintegrate anything, but they're just kinetic energy. He also has what's called a pile driver ray, which is I guess also kinetic energy, but it's specifically emitting force onto the object rather than through it. He has a freeze ray, he has a sonic ray, yeah, he even has something called a force reversal ray, which isn't which I thought was gonna be sends any energy back to stuff. No, he used it and it just made a bunch of people disappear. So maybe it's maybe it's just a name for the energy ray, or maybe it's maybe it's a figurative thing where it literally evens the odds. I don't know. Maybe it works off of abstract, in which case it's broken. But yeah, in addition to that, he's got things like hyperspeed and whatnot. And, this is a guy who's fighting against, just big monsters and robots who he one-shots pretty much any time that he uses any of these weapons. So, again, like, the fact that he's just like, my heat ray will beat you, and then his heat ray beats you, and then that's the end of the encounter. He has had, like, he has done things with, like, he's kept up with, spacecrafts with his hyperspeed. He has his own spacecraft, so he really shouldn't have to do that, but, you know, whatever. He, like I said, he's disintegrated giant robots, he's destroyed giant monsters, he's done all these things. Other than that, he's pretty much, from my understanding, just a normal human, just with extraordinary... Oh, and his equipment lets him breathe in space. That's the other part of it. So, but, yeah, and he's basically, and he did that for as long as he did, and then he became a talk show host. So, yeah, that's Space Ghost. Birdman's a little more complex with his story because he actually has, like, a background. So Birdman is a character who became a vessel for the Egyptian god Ra, and as such was given a fragment of Ra's power to defend, to defend justice and all that. And with that power, he gains actual wings that allow him to fly to keep up with aircraft. He gains the ability to use energy projection, which again, it can blow up, entire ships. It can blow up, robots. It's destroyed, it's killed giant monsters. And he creates what are known as, I think they call them semi-solid or like quasi-solid sun shields, which I guess would just be like solar, like a concentrated form of solar radiation that creates like a solid shield. So I guess it's like a hard light shield. And he's tanked missiles with these, like, and I don't mean like he formed a big one. This is just one that's around his arm, and he tanks missiles with it. So that means he has to be, because he does gain superhuman strength and durability, he has to be strong enough to actually take the force of the missile. So that's insane. His only limitation, however, is that he's powered by the sun. So he needs to be in sunlight, and he gets weaker if he goes long periods of time without being in sunlight. So how do we... Breaking down this fight. Both of these characters are very similar. They both serve very similar roles, right? As in, they one-shot every villain that they go against. And it's only, like, the circumstances that ever trap them. That being said, I mean, obviously Space Ghost has the higher versatility of weapons. So, if it came down to it, like, their rays might match each other. Space Ghost would probably also have the speed advantage, right? Because he's keeping up with ships possibly traveling at, like, light speed, whereas Birdman is keeping up with, like, aircraft. And Birdman doesn't really have a counter for the invisibility / intangibility of Space Ghost. Like, and not only that, like, Space Ghost's force field covers his whole body, and he can actually expand it, whereas Birdman has to, like, have it solely in front of him. Like, so, there's a lot of just, like, weapons wise and speed wise, Space Ghost definitely takes it in terms of, like, versatility and whatnot. Birdman might come out on top in terms of, like, just power and durability, which might be a key factor here, because we don't really see a top limit because they're all fighting the same types of villains every week, basically. We don't really see like too much of an upper limit of Space Ghost's weaponry. So if we can assume that they're these, if we can assume that his power caps at giant robot, then Birdman might be able to tank it. The other thing that's worth mentioning, and I don't know that this is necessarily true. The only time I've ever seen Space Ghost's weaponry fail was with a Shazam crossover, where the Sultan of Flames summoned a fire demon, and Space Ghost's freeze ray had no effect, and then Shazam summoned a wave of water to kill the fire demon, right? So that could be like just fire not working on the freeze ray, or him not having a weapon for that situation. It could be like an order of magnitude, like the demon was so much more powerful. Or it could be that because it was magic, right? It could be because it was a demon that his weapons didn't, they might not be effective against magical beings, which, if that's the case, Birdman would solo this whole fight just by virtue of having the power of Ra, but, and the power of Attorney. But, other than that speculation, which are really, I mean, if there's any more backing towards that theory, I'd be willing to say, oh, well, Birdman would just solo this whole thing. But even then, Birdman doesn't have a way around. Even if we assume that, Birdman doesn't really have a way around intangibility, and he'd also have to catch Space Ghost to beat him, which would be, his only real advantage here is that he is so much stronger and more durable compared to the normal human Space Ghost. So, yeah, if he catches Space Ghost, he might be able to beat him, but there's nothing preventing Space Ghost from just flying away faster or just turning intangible and him not being able to. And it's not like he loses anything from that. We've seen him use his energy weapons while he's intangible. So, like, not only that, he also has a force field, which is like, why do you need a force field if you can turn intangible? That's kind of stupid. But point is, like, Space Ghost has so many options to survive and like evade Birdman that eventually it would just become a war of attrition, and Space Ghost would come out on top. Even if their durability is a huge factor, eventually you would chip away at him. So unless like he has just complete immunity due to the divine nature of his powers, but even then, this is pretty much like a stalemate. There's nothing stopping a character from nothing stopping him from just going intangible and outlast, So yeah, I guess I have to give it to Space Ghost based on that. Like, there's a possibility that Birdman could win this, but I'm more certain that Space Ghost would. I'm not certain, but I'm more certain that Space Ghost would be the winner here. But anyway, yeah, glad I could get everyone an episode again, even if it's probably a very niche one that not many people will care about. But anyway, this is Rebel 95. See ya.